Hey everyone, Nick Engvall here. Before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about some of the people that make the sneaker history community and this podcast possible. It's more important than ever to think about who you give your money to when you're buying clothing to go with your kicks. Our friends at Guilty Goods started their brand with a goal of giving back, especially to the communities that make sneaker culture possible. With every purchase from Guilty Goods, at least 10% of the proceeds are donated to organizations like Big Brothers and Big Sisters, the Susan G. Komen Foundation, the Movement for Black Lives, and many more. You can save 30% on your order by using the code HISTORY at guiltygoods.us. Again, that's history at guiltygoods.us for 30% off, and you can feel good about your purchase knowing you're supporting a meaningful cause. Sneakers are all about presentation, and if you're like me, displaying your kicks at home or in the office is just as important as when they're on your feet. Sneaker Throne makes sneaker display cases featuring customizable LED lights, drop-side cases to showcase the entire side of the shoe, not just the heel or the toe, the whole shoe. They've also got display cases for trading card collectors and hat collectors. To me, it's the perfect way to display your collection. You can save at least 10% on your Sneaker Throne order by using the code HISTORY at sneakerthrone.com. That's history at sneakerthrone.com. If you're a Patreon supporter or a member of our Discord community, you already know about Kicks with V hot sauce and his small batch, locally sourced hot sauce. V has been one of the biggest supporters of sneaker history and the podcast since the early days. He's currently the defending champion in our community trivia nights competition. Kicks with V hot sauce has been a huge hit with the community. You can save 10% on your order by using the code SneakerHistory10 at kickswithvhots.com. That's SneakerHistory10 at kickswithvhots.com. Now, you're probably here because you like sneakers, and if you join the Discord, you know our community is about so much more than that. Whether it's the marathon-like community calls, trivia night debates, the in-person meetups, or just sharing our favorite experiences, we found that although we have such different backgrounds, we all have some unexpected shared passions. Not only does the entire community look out for each other when it comes to releases, we're like a support group for life in general. You can join the Discord community for free by heading to the show notes of this episode. After you're done listening to this episode, tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how far a simple compliment can take you, and we all know how good it feels to have someone show their appreciation. Now let's get into today's episode.
Jordan trying to shake off Starks. Oh, what a move! With no regard for human life. Final seconds. Bryant for the win.
Iverson against Gill. The crowd on its feet. Allen for the win.
Welcome to the Sneaker History Podcast.
What up, what up? Welcome back to the Sneaker History Podcast. I'm with my guys, Mike and Robbie, but we've got a special guest today to talk some sneakers. I was trying to think of when our guest and I first connected. Probably like 2012, 2013 is when I remember reaching out and putting him on a list with a bunch of other people on Complex. But I think we'll get into his backstory a little bit more, and just want to introduce everybody to Mache Customs.
What's up?
How's it going, man?
It's good. I it seems like so long that I can't remember when it was when we first started talking, but it sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean, I know, I lived in New York like 2012, 2013. So I know we met in person a couple times at various events then. Yeah. But I was trying to think back, like the first thing that comes to mind was the thing that I did at Complex, where I remember you had made a Kobe 8, like a What the Kobe 8 that had like a leopard skin or leopard print tongue.
Yep.
That's the one that stood out in my mind, but I also know there's tons of other stuff there. So maybe give a little bit of background on who you are and, how you kind of got started in this whole thing.
Yeah. Well, my name is Dan Gamache. So people always ask where Mache came from, and people always, if they read the word, they don't know how to pronounce it. So it's been a common, call me Mache, whatever. And Gamache is my full name, and I played baseball, and there was 4 Dans on the baseball team. So what happened was you started to get called by your last name, and obviously it started as Gamache, and then it just got shortened to Mache, and it always stuck. I've always been into art. Obviously shoes is something that we all share and all that stuff. I started doing the custom shoes back in 2004. well before any kind of social media. I think, having the Nike Talks and the ISS forums and, uptowns.net, that was kind of like our social media back then, and just kind of learning that other people were doing custom shoes. Back then there was no YouTube to show how to do things, and it was just a lot of trial by error. We were just doing it for fun, just kind of a bunch of artists and people that had appreciation for shoes as well. And we were just kind of doing whatever, it could have been just artwork based on like comic books or, themes, flipping, say a Jordan 3 print on an Air Max 90 or something like that. It was just kind of trying stuff, and it wasn't so much for attention. It was just more to be creative and kind of, bounce our ideas off of other people that shared a common interest. Then obviously you fast forward 18 years, which makes me feel really old, and just seeing where it is now, it's wild.
Yeah, such a different beast altogether, right? I mean, I think 2004, 2005, like that era was completely different. Like you said, you might have had maybe a MySpace, but uptowns.net, like that was like, I bet you most people probably don't even remember that. That was like Nike Park era, and when like all of our conversations around sneakers typically just lived within those forums. Oh
yeah, like our goal was as a customizer. It wasn't even a customizer back then. We just wanted to be on the top of the customs forum on ISS. That was like the top of the thread. If you were there, you were popping, and that was the equivalent of getting 20,000 likes on Instagram these days.
Yeah. So I guess like we've got some questions for you just to kind of, fill people in. And I'll start off with kind of the first one is, what was that first time where I don't want to say hit it big, but you got a ton of attention from your work. I think there's so many different places now you could look at that, but do you remember that time of just holy shit, never thought this would happen?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the pair that I actually did for LeBron back in 2013 was the one that put me in more of a mainstream space. I had been doing it for years and years and years, but the fact that, LeBron got a pair of shoes, and being the entity that he is and the reach that he has, he had kids in Iowa who knew who Mache Custom was. And that was probably the biggest moment at that time. I remember this is when Instagram was just starting to get popping, and I went to sleep and looked, whatever my follower count was. And then LeBron had posted the shoes. I didn't realize that he had, and I woke up and I had 13,000 more followers than I went to bed with that next morning. That's a big attribute to the algorithm and how it was back then. I mean, that wouldn't happen the way that it is now, but that was probably the first moment where it was more people than just our little niche group knowing who I was.
So I remember that pretty vividly because you actually, if I remember right, you had posted a picture giving him the shoes. And I want to say he's wearing that D Wade hat that was trendy back then.
Yeah, that was he was going to the arena for the All-Star game, so he was in his suit and all that. And I went to the hotel and was just waiting for him. And before then, no one knew that he was there. But it was a team hotel. When I'm sitting in the lobby, I see Tim Duncan walking by. I saw Drake. Just all these different people. And as soon as LeBron came out, then I gave him the shoes, and then a swarm of people just came and hounded him. And he was just trying to get out to go to the game. But I ended up going out there to Houston to deliver the shoes, and that was kind of part of the, him taking care of me. He got us out there and took care of us, and it was cool. It was a cool, very quick exchange, but just the fact of the impact that it had on not only sneakers but our custom little world, it was big.
Hey man, go ahead.
That Iron Man 10, right?
Yeah. And
crazy box.
Yeah. The funniest part was I had done it. It was the week before, or leading up to it. And I was dealing with LeBron's team and his Nike rep supposed to give me the shoes. And this is 3 days before I'm supposed to leave for Houston. And the shoes hadn't come yet. So I'm freaking out because first off, you can't find a LeBron 10 in his size, at your local Foot Locker. So you can't just go and get it. So I'm freaking out. And finally I get a hold of LeBron's people, and they overnighted a pair of shoes, and I did it. And I just went down to Home Depot and got a big Husky box and painted it. And that's kind of how that came across, but I had no real rhyme or reason. I knew it was going to be Iron Man. That's about all I really knew. There wasn't much of a game plan. I usually don't have a game plan when it comes to these custom shoes. I just look at the shoe and kind of feel with it and go with it. It's kind of like if you go to a tattoo artist and they freehand the design. It's kind of how I do it.
That's definitely an Iron Man 2 vibe.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I remember they were revealing the suit, like the new, color blocking and whatever, and I wanted to really make it as authentic as possible because I had done a Tony Stark LeBron 9 Elite before, and he had seen that. And he actually came to me initially because I had done another LeBron 10 that was based off the Devastator from Transformers, and he had seen those and he tweeted about it and got back to him that I was the one that did them because he already knew who I was. And this is when I just started to really work on my own and do it, as a full-time gig. I had made like 12 pairs available for people to order and purchase. And I told him that, and he was like, I really want to get a one-on-one something just for me, which is understandable. Everyone wants to get something for themselves. And that's when he suggested the Iron Man. And funny thing is then the LeBron 11 was actually based off of Iron Man, like with the foam and all that stuff. So it's kind of funny that those things kind of tied together, but I didn't know they were going to tie together until the next model came out.
Killer.
So, clearly this is something that you love to do even before you started, like, kind of breaking out on your own and doing it for, doing it for your occupation. Like, when is the first time you remember, like, getting a check or someone's like, hey, we want to pay you for, one of your customizations, one of your, one-on-ones?
Right. Well, when I first started, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Like there was no manual or anything to tell you how to properly prep a shoe and like what's the right paint and things like that. So when I did my first pair, I had a pair of beat up Air Max 90s in my mom's basement, and I was just got some paint from like Michael's craft store and was painting, and they were all different shades of purple. I have a picture of the actual first ever Mache custom. And back then they were dope, but in hindsight, they were absolutely terrible because you see paint strokes everywhere and whatever. But I just kept practicing. Like it's like a sport, you get better at it and you feel more comfortable in your abilities. And, when I felt more comfortable and learned more of how to properly do it, that's when I started opening up and actually charge money, because people were asking me to do it like at the barber shops and things like that. Because again, that was the only way to really get my name out back then besides ISS and whatever. But so trying to think. Yeah, it's probably within that first year of me doing stuff. So 2003, 2004, I just had local guys wearing my stuff and I was charging like $75 to paint the shoes just because I was still learning, and then as I got better at doing colorways and things like that, that's when I branched out into what I'm used to doing, which is, more detailed artwork and painting it by hand, like portraits and cartoons and, whatever it was.
Nice. So did you, from that growth of going into barbershops and, kind of like guerrilla marketing yourself, like, hey, I can do this, this, and this. When did a brand first reach out to you? Like, hey, I want you to do this for us. Like, when did that relationship start happening?
When I first started really getting my name out, I was going to like the Funkmaster Flex car shows and giving my shoes giving my shoes to Fat Joe and things like that. Like there was the international sneaker battle and all these things, and there was a custom category, and I won like best custom or whatever. So that was, like you said, like just kind of guerrilla marketing, kind of going out there and giving your product to anyone who would take it. It was one of those things where I understood that you had to build a relationship, you had to get it out there, and that's the only way it was going to happen. It wasn't like you could just DM somebody on Twitter and be like, hey, I want to give you a free pair of shoes. It wasn't like that. So I can't remember exactly when the first time like a brand came to me, but what ended up happening was, I remember people that maybe were interns at different agencies back then, like a Danny Nunez and, Josh Medek and things like that. They were, working with Jordan and whatever. But at that time, they were still really, really small time. So it was just a matter of, maintaining relationships. And, when they did actually get into more of a role where they could do things, they would come back to me and be like, hey, we got a cool idea. We want to implement you for this. And that was across the board, with brands. It was between Puma, Adidas, Nike, Jordan, Asics, whatever. And it's kind of just grown. They look to me for, quick turnaround projects. And I remember Josh Medek, he's now with Nike Basketball, and he had me do a pair of shoes for Gino when UConn women won their 9th title. So we did a Kobe 9. And it was literally, he sent me a pair of blank white Kobe 9s. That was like a sample pair. And we were just sitting and waiting if the women won. And as soon as the girls won, I got a text from Josh. He's like, all right, big boy, let's get to work. So I painted all night and got them done, and actually drove up to stores and came to Gino. And yeah, it was a cool experience. I'm relatively close to UConn. I mean, it's like an hour and a half ride. But, I delivered them, and kind of tying into a Kobe story was when Gino got the shoes, he was tweeting and talking to Kobe, and he goes, I got a pair of Kobe's you'll never have, and all this stuff. So it was pretty cool to be part of that cool kind of moment. I wish Gino doesn't have a Twitter anymore. I wish I had it, because I was trying to screenshot it when obviously when Kobe passed, because it was a really cool story.
You've done a lot of shoes, but those 9 Elites are one of my top 5. Like the details, like it looks like it was lasered, not hand done. It's insane.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I really try to do. It's with customs, there's such a wide array of, I guess, types of customs. There's with the brands now, they're so big in the DIY and making things that look like arts and crafts projects, which I can respect, but like that was never like my goal. I always want to make a custom look like it was, came off the line or looked factory, unless someone was asking for that. So when I did a request like that, I always wanted to make it look like that it was legit. Unless you told them it was custom, they wouldn't know.
Man, so from like the guerrilla marketing, this next analogy is going to make sense, but you're kind of like the Jay-Z of shoe customization. I know you're a big Jay-Z fan.
Oh yeah.
So like, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I'm slinging shoes out of the back of my trunk.
No, I mean, and it also comes back to like, when did you go from like a businessman to a businessman and like ditch the job and decide like Mache Customs is what I'm doing from here on out? Yeah.
Before I took it, I guess it's like a full-time thing. I mean, I worked so many different jobs. I couldn't even tell you, but at the time I was still getting somewhat notoriety for my work. I'd been published in like Soul Collector when they still had a magazine, and I was in Sneaker Freaker, and people in the sneaker world were starting to learn who I was and knew my work. And one of the many jobs I was doing was I was selling credit card processing door to door, and I happened to go into a sneaker store, and they recognized me because they had the Sneaker Freaker issue that I was in. And they're like, why are you doing this? And I was like, because I got to make money. And, they asked me if I wanted to work there and kind of, work on just doing customs in there and whatever. So I ended up quitting that job and working there and helping run the store. And I was painting shoes, and I was getting orders online, going through Instagram or whatever, still not really charging much for what I did, because I was still just working on building my name to, whatever it is now. And then it got to a point where I remember when I did the LeBron 9 Nerf custom, that was probably the first part where I took a turn to be like, this is a little more serious, because I was spending more time answering my emails than dealing with the store, and I didn't have the time to deal with the store, and I was like, I gotta leave. And I remember the guy had told me, he's like, well, if the sneaker thing doesn't work out, you can always come back. And I always kind of remember that as like a big FU to me. I was like, nah, this is gonna work, because it's one of those things where there's no safety net, you're just gonna go and do it. And I wish I could remember the year that I started doing it, but it was around the LeBron 9, so whatever year that was, 2012, I'd say.
Exactly.
And, yeah. So, and that's where I met you. How about that? So, so that's kind of where it started. And then my wife was my girlfriend at the time. She was working, and she pushed me to go out and do that, because she saw the potential in what I was doing. And she was like, you can't be just riding here doing this. You have to go and really pursue this. And she's been a driving force in this whole thing, Mrs. Mache. She has her own little cult following of people that support her too. It's pretty cool.
From payment processing to processing payments.
How about that?
So we've talked about, some of my favorites, like that LeBron 9 Nerf was beautiful. Obviously the UConn story. I love the story aspect of all this sneaker stuff. That's kind of where I ended up in this whole world. And the Iron Man, LeBron 10, like if you had to say like your 3, favorites that you've worked on over the years, could you do it?
It's hard because, as an artist first, you're always very emotionally invested in whatever you're working in. I'm very fortunate now that I can kind of pick and choose the projects and the things that I work on. It's not out of necessity. So it's not just like someone comes to me with like, I want to do a South Beach Jordan 11. And I'll usually say no, just because, at the end of the day, there's so many people that can do that custom. I want someone to come to me and be like, I want to get something that only you can do. So I think anything that has a lot more artistic freedom. I remember doing a pair of Liquid Swords dunks for the Jizza from Wu-Tang. That was probably one of my top pairs. And the story that kind of goes with that too is I had done them for myself because I've always been a fan of artwork, but being also a Wu-Tang fan, the Liquid Swords album was a very iconic cover. And I remember doing them on a pair of Dunk Highs for myself and ended up getting hit up by someone from Wu-Tang, like a producer. And he Jizza wanted to get a pair done for the Pitchfork Festival because he was going to perform the whole Liquid Swords album in its entirety for his set. And he wanted to wear the shoes. So I didn't really have time to do another pair. So I found out he wore the same size I had. And I was like, well, I'll just give him my pair. And thinking I would do another pair for myself, I never did. So ended up going down to New York. And I remember delivering the shoes to him. And he traded me a pair of the original A-Life pumps, the ball outs, the originals for him. Because he was asked if I was a collector. And I was like, yeah. He's like, do you want the A-Lives? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So, sneakerhead at heart always. And that same night was when Ronnie Feig was doing his first ever ASICS collaboration with David Z. Was the same night. And they had a big event for it because my buddy Treats, who used to write at Complex at the time, he DJs. And I DJed with him in college, and I was going down there to just go and support him. Didn't even know, who Ronnie was or anything like that. And I ended up going to that same event and was walking to David Z, holding my pumps in my one hand, and I'm going to this event for the ASICS. I am getting 2 out of the 3 pairs and the T-shirt and all that stuff. So it was kind of a crazy moment in sneaker history for not only me, but also like for Ronnie too. So I told him that story a couple of years back, and he was like, that's a wild story. I'm like, yeah, who would have known?
Yeah. What's even crazier about that is like, I mean, I know you're in Connecticut, but I know you're close enough to the city that, you're there regularly, but it's like, that's like a trifecta of New York sneaker things at that moment, right? Like it's so poignant if you think back about that time.
Yeah, the intersection was crazy. And, like I'm probably like an hour away. So it's like you said, I can get down there pretty easily.
Now, Mosh, with everything you kind of explained it with your last answer. Like you have all this visibility with people in your sneakers and just everything going on near, especially like New York and that the East Coast, like with all these outlets starting to put more of a view, emphasis on sneakers, like big companies like ESPN, Bleacher Report, and even just the NBA itself, do you find it being more pressure on you to, produce something different to stand out from, everybody else trying to be a customizer and then just different things that the athletes and, even celebrities are wearing? Or is it something that you like the pressure and like to push your creative juices, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, well, I'm a competitor by nature. Like I played sports all my life. I was a college athlete. So I always say that I'm the type that would probably punch a little kid in the face to win a game of badminton. I've always been that way. and seeing where, I started and, there really wasn't anyone out there doing it the way I'm doing it currently. Back then, I would see the Sabotages and the Stashes and the Futures. Those are the people that I looked up to when I started, and just seeing, I remember when Sabotage had that Nike Dunk, I was like, well, it's possible to, obviously kind of cross over and have a major brand do something. So that was kind of always a goal of mine, was to work with a brand. Little did I know what would happen, fast forward 18 years. I think the competitive nature is great. I think, the young guys and so many people that are out there doing it now, obviously, as a competitive type, it's kind of like iron sharpens iron. When I see someone that's doing really well, I'm happy for them. And I'm just like, yep. I was like, I'm going to step up my game just because, I want to kind of, I guess, maintain, the not only the popularity, but just the what's the word I'm trying to think of, like the reputation that I have, just kind of doing things the right way, but not really checking so much to like see what other people are doing for inspiration, but just kind of looking forward. It's kind of like I think of that picture of Michael Phelps when he's swimming and the other people behind him. That's kind of like my mentality. But also, I'm also not so high up in the clouds that I don't know what's going on, because I have to be in touch with what's going on to stay relevant. Because being around for 18 years and just being stubborn and stick to my style, and you don't adapt to styles and trends, you're just being stubborn. You're going to get left in the dust.
So, I mean, do you get competitive, or do you want to outdo yourself? Like you
It's a little bit
do.
of both. It's a little bit of both.
For Stephon Diggs, like, do you want to just like, okay, I'm going to do the best one I've done yet?
Yeah, I mean, every week I'm trying to top myself, and it's certainly become a challenge just because every week it's like, damn, we just did a pair with big perm with curlers on it. Like, how are we going to top that next week? And every week, you get the Bleacher, like you said, the Bleacher Reports and the ESPNs covering this stuff. And it's, with the guys that are similarly as competitive with these pro athletes, they want to top each other as well. Like, I remember I used to get photos of, say, I was working with one athlete and I get a picture of someone else's customs and be like, we got to top those. And me, I'm like, yeah, I'm down. Let's go. And it's always been that way. With Diggs, the relationship, it has been great over the first, 4 years we worked together. And, him going to Buffalo, the dynamic won't change. Obviously, we'll use a different shade of colors and paints, but when you get people that trust your vision and trust what you're doing, but also care so much about the end product and not have any kind of investment, you want to stick with those kind of people and take care of them. That's why our relationship's been so good. There's guys that might just get, one off here and there, which is great, but you have someone every week that's just as excited as you are. It makes you just want to do the best for them.
Maybe instead of Starbucks, you'll do a Tim Hortons or something.
Could you imagine? I think he's going to have a little bit of a culture shock when he gets up there. But I think there's the fan base in Buffalo is great. Like I said, my mom's a fan, my brother's a fan, and he actually lives up that way. But I said I'll have to make a trip. I already told him that we're going to do a West Side Gun pair for week 1, so I have to let him know who West Side Gun is first.
Oh man! So I mean, if you had to pick a favorite, like this is children, do you like working with the NFL or the WWE more? I mean, are those like your two, or MLB? Like, what's your favorite sport to work in conjunction with?
I think each one has its own thing that makes it great. Working with WWE, certainly being part of such a great company, and they have such a big reach, and the people are just like, they're great, but they also have to kind of stick within whatever their character is, or their gimmick. So like when I do like stuff for like Becky Lynch, we're always going to stick within whatever her thing is. Or like, I remember when I was doing Nikki Bella's shoes, they would have to get approved by Vince before they went on. So there's a little more checks and balances for the most part. But I think with the NFL, there's such a wide array of themes. You can kind of open up the playbook a lot more and give a lot more options as a creative. I think having less handcuffs on you, the better. I mean, if you just have to stick with a colorway, that's one thing. Figuring out a way to make Michelle Tanner in Full House fit a Minnesota Vikings colorway. It's always a fun challenge.
So let me flip that. So if you were 10-year-old Dan, who would he be most excited that you're working with? Which sport?
If 10-year-old Dan, I would probably say wrestling, just because I think when I was younger, I was all about playing baseball. So I think if I was doing stuff for Frank Thomas and Ken Griffey Jr. and Randy Johnson back then, it'd be a different answer. But just as a fan, the fact that Stone Cold Steve Austin follows me on Twitter is crazy. I'd have never thought that was going to happen. So that'd be my final answer.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I guess like to kind of like take that one step deeper into the business aspect of your work and how you've been able to partner with these massive entities. Do you find that any particular any one of the partners that you've had across all these different platforms, whether it be like a Nike or Adidas or ASICS or whomever, or on the WWE, NFL side, does any one of those, I guess maybe in turn support you more? I know like the creative freedom is a big thing, but there's also the, kind of give and take of like, is this going to get love on social channels, or is this going to be put into an experience that, people can come see at a game or at a match or whatever that is?
No, I understand. I'll be honest with you. The WWE has shown a lot of love with just sharing stuff. I remember when I did the Stone Cold cleats for Diggs against Dallas, WWE shared it on all their channels, and they didn't have to do that. So I especially with their reach and whatever, and the fact that WWE is so protective of their properties, and the fact that they do that is a huge thing for me, just because I know how many other Instagram pages get shut down because they're using their content, and the fact that they are cool with me working with them, that's awesome. But then also the Vikings, this past year, every week they would have a separate feature on whatever I was doing for Diggs every week. Like they had my own graphic, and they would show it in the stadium, which is, as a Vikings fan, is surreal. But it seems like those two have been great helping with that. And also the athletes, they genuinely want to support and show love, and not even just Diggs, but you get, the CC Sabathias and things like guys like that. They all show love. And I think that's, why relationships are so important, because they genuinely want to show love just as much as I want to do a great product for them.
Yeah. And Dan, so you mentioned, and we've all seen it just firsthand through all of the Instagram posts and just, different outlets that feature your sneakers. You do such a great job and have such an amazing reputation. Do you ever get to a point that when you're trying to make these awesome products for your clients, that you ever hit a creative wall? And if you do, what do you do to get through it and get past it to get to the next thing? Yeah.
I mean, when you're full speed ahead all the time, you certainly get burnt out, no matter if you're doing something that you love all the time or not. I mean, I know probably about a month ago, I hit a wall, and I was just like, I need a break, because I hadn't really given myself a break. Even if we're on, say my wife and I are on vacation, I'm still on my phone, worrying about content, worrying about all these other things. In terms of the creative part, I mean, it's one of those things where it's a crazy balance, because you want to find something obviously to draw in a crowd and, to get eyes on you. And, for the most part, sneaker blogs don't really share the custom shoes as much as they used to. I mean, I remember I had a conversation with Yu Ming years ago, and he was just saying how Sneaker News just stopped covering customs altogether, just because, for personal preference, he was just like, they were just putting up anything. If it was a custom and it had a South Beach colorway or whatever, they're putting it up, and it was kind of tarnishing the reputation of custom shoes, because, some things just weren't good. And there was no real person. I mean, it's kind of hard to be like, who's in charge to say what's a good custom and what's not, because art's so subjective. But going back to this creative thing, like, you want to come out with something that people are going to like. Or say, like, if you're trying to get a little attention, you'll do a shoe on, you'll do a Travis Scott custom, or you'll do on not Easy anymore, but like, back in the day, doing a pair of Air Mags, you're going to get attention for that. So it's kind of like, you got to figure out what is a topic or a theme or a base shoe that's going to garner yourself attention without taking away from your credibility of your reputation, what you're known for. Like, I don't want to I get asked a million times to do a Louis Vuitton custom. I won't do it, because that's not what I do, and it's tough, but then there's other times I'm like, I just don't know what to do, or just thinking of creative things. But with the internet and things, there's so many topics and, other inspirations that you can find. I mean, when I first started, it was all about movies, sports, music, things that, when I was a kid, that's what got me going. And I kind of feel like, as an older person, I hate to say I'm an older person in this sneaker generation now, I don't really connect with the Dragon Ball Z stuff. I'm not that generation. So I'm like, and I'm not going to just do it to get attention, because that's not me. That's not what I do. So I figured out other ways to connect with that younger generation, and, whether it's working with younger athletes and things like that, you just got to find a way to make it work if you want to sustain, Yeah,
man, that makes a ton of sense. And one thing I really picked up on, there's a couple of things seem like you won't do. What's like the top 3 requests that you get that there's no debate you're not going to do it, besides South Beach?
Yeah, any kind of that designer stuff, I leave that to the pros. I feel like, Dapper Dan did his thing back in the day, and unless you're using some authentic material and sewing that stuff on, I won't go near it. I won't paint it. I remember even when I did the pair for Nikki Bella, she wanted to get the Louis Vuitton print, the Louis Vuitton Supreme on her Jordan 1s. And I was like, I won't do it, even for you. But what I'm doing is suggesting a way to get that vibe, but still make it personal. So I remember I interlocked the NB and for Nikki Bella, looking like the Louis Vuitton, and then instead of the Supreme, I wrote Fearless in that font. So it was a way to kind of get what she wanted and still get that vibe, but also kind of keep my credibility and kind of keep my values intact. Trying to think what else I would turn down. It's more just either just not stepping on toes, or say another design that someone else had done. Like they'll come to me and, can you do this? I'm like, why don't you go to that other person? For one, I don't know if you're looking to get that done, you should probably go to the original artist or me. I probably charge more than that person anyway for the time. And I think that's also a challenge too, is, people, how they look at custom. Some people look at custom shoes as just a consumer product, as, looking at it and being like, oh, it's, very expensive to pay, $300, $400 for a pair of shoes as it is. But then, artwork on top of that, it's all, art is worth what someone's willing to pay for it. And that's how I look at it now. I don't really look at it as a shoe. I look at it as that's the canvas, and then you're paying for the artwork. I think that as long as people understand that and can respect it, then we'll be totally fine. But there's other people that are just looking for a bargain, and you know what? Custom shoes just aren't for you.
Right. I mean, you get what you pay for. If you want something for $40, go buy a can of spray paint.
Yeah, I just realized I went on a total tangent there, so I apologize for that.
No, you're good. So, I mean, Mosh, the sneaker fan, what was the first shoe that you really got was like, damn, I love shoes? Like
black and silver Jordan 5s. That was it. When I was a kid, I was raised in a trailer park. Yeah, we weren't poor, but we definitely weren't someone that could just go out and spend $100 on a pair of sneakers. So, when I told my mom I wanted a pair of Jordans, she was like, all right, well, go earn that money. So I was mowing lawns and shoveling driveways and doing all that. And, I gathered up my money and went to Foot Locker. When it was still the AstroTurf on the walls and they had the scoreboard and all that stuff. And, there was no East Bay magazine or any sneaker news or Nice Kicks to tell you what shoes were coming out. So at the time, the last Air Jordan I saw was the 4. So when I went there, I was thinking that's what I was going to get. And then I went there and the black and silver 5s were there, and that was the Jordan I got. So that was the first pair I bought my own money, and I coveted that shoe. I have it tattooed on me. It's some people, I see a lot of crazy sneaker tattoos, but this actually has a little more meaning to me. But and then after that, it was just, kind of started from there. And then, when I got comfortable enough to afford, together things, I stockpiled all the other shoes I missed out on as a kid. There was some, as SC Trainer, Bo Jackson's in the Raider colorway. Or I remember one story was, like you used to go to, school and you get like the one pair you can wear to go to the first day of school. My choice was between the Raider colorway of the SC Trainer, Bo Jackson's, or the Mailman Catapult from LA Gear. And I took the LA Gears, and I'm so mad that I did that. It's still one of those dumbest things I ever made, dumbest decisions.
Man, those are like 4 different sneaker tendencies I think we all share, and probably all our listeners do too. Thinking back, I mean, if you could give a pair of shoes to someone who's just starting out in sneakers, who just saw one of your customs and is like, I'm going to go start buying a pair of shoes for my own, what pair would you recommend and why?
You're saying it just as a collector or someone who's into custom sneakers?
From a collecting standpoint, where somebody is going to rock them too, is like, a 15-year-old going and getting a pair of, let's just say, like Concords.
Right. I think a safe choice is probably just the black cement 3s. I think that's the staple for everyone's rotation. I think it's a obviously very versatile and wearable shoe. And then also, if you want to decide you want to start doing some artwork, it has some flat panels that you can actually do some artwork and color blocking on. I think that's a very good shoe to start with, and for somewhat attainable considering how many times they've retroed it now. I think that would be a good staple. And then if I want to kind of branch out a little more, probably a pair of Air Max 1s.
Nice. All four of us have both of those shoes. So
yeah, I'm sure we do.
Yeah. So I guess like kind of looking at that, like on the, from the, like, how do you get started in sneakers or potentially artwork? Like what would you then, let's say you're handing that Air Max 1 or that black cement to a 15-year-old artist that doesn't really know where they're headed with it, but knows this is what they enjoy. Like what advice would you give that young kid with that?
I would tell them to expect to mess up. And I think, and the most important part is to learn from whatever that mistake is. I mean, I know I could probably put a kid through junior college and all the money I've wasted in base shoes, destroying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And I think we're in a society where everything is, has to be done immediately. If you don't see success immediately, you give up and you just say, screw it, I'm going to go on to something else. And I think that the people that persevere and learn from it are the best off. In terms of, an artist too, I think if you start small, I think maybe not start pinning on that 3. I'm kind of backpedaling on my statement, just because if you do destroy that shoe, you don't want to feel like you ruin an investment. I remember like my first pair was a pair of all white 90s. So, at the time that's $100 or, start with a pair of beaters and just learn the techniques. Luckily there's so many resources on how to properly do custom shoes. Now it's great, whether it's YouTube, whether it's on blogs, things like that. I think there's so many resources, and as an old man, I try not to be jaded by the younger generation that have so many resources that I didn't have, and I just appreciate it now and just kind of see the growth. But I would just start small. I would maybe just change the color of the swoosh and see how that starts and see how that looks. Work on that being perfect. When you get a tattoo, you usually don't just start with the back piece. You want to start with something small and then work your way up to that. And I think that's I always use tattoos as a very good analogy to compare, whether it's, scope of pricing or even just like, getting work done.
Yeah. I mean, it's so relatable too. Like, my experience, like on the media side, whether that's, shooting photos for people or writing, I just think back to like when I was young, how many mistakes I had to make before I really remembered to not make those same mistakes, and it's like reassuring to me, even as another, old man sneakerhead, like, that you went through that kind of stuff too, because I think like all of us tend to get down because of those mistakes and because of those things that we, in the moment, we might not realize it's just a learning experience and it's progress. But I guess like, it's considering like the current, stuff going on in the world, what would you say to that same kid in terms of, maybe trying to find inspiration while they're stuck inside or stuck relatively close to home for the next foreseeable future, to like help them get through that?
I'll tell you what, inspiration is everywhere. I mean, I know I've sat my butt on the couch for the last 3 days, and even though I've been going nuts that I haven't been able to go to my studio, I'm sitting here watching Netflix, watching the Tiger King, watching this crazy stuff. But like things like that. I mean, even watching YouTube and watching old rap videos, and I was watching DJ Premier do a IG live, last night, and obviously like D Nice was doing his thing too. So it's like I always get inspired by music and by other things. I've done so many customs based off of movies, growing up. Like I've Coming to America and Darkwing Duck and all these things that were an inspiration to me. I think, if you can't physically go to the store and go buy a base shoe, I mean, you can still, if you have some Sharpies and, go to town on a pair of beat up shoes, get a pair of Converses. And, luckily a lot of these people have these resources, don't even know that they can use them, or just take the time to just decompress. Yeah. I think we're so wrapped up in, our own lives sometimes that it takes something like this to kind of give us a chance to, kind of sit back and give yourself a little bit of time to reevaluate and things like that. I mean, that's what I've been doing. I know, WrestleMania is coming, and I have 2 or 3 pairs, and I brought them home, just knowing no matter what I have to do those pairs. But after that, we're kind of chilling.
All right. So last question. I guess this is kind of for everybody because we always share what we're rocking. So I know we've been inside, but maybe the last pair, either what's on your feet today or the last pair that you wore if you've been on the couch like most of us.
Right. I was going to say, well, I remember I was wearing a pair of custom Mache gang eye slides before, but what was the last pair I was wearing? Oh, I've been wearing just like a pair of 992s. I've always worn New Balance, and obviously with this, I guess, resurgence again, thanks to Joe Fresh Goods and some other cool collaborations and things like that, I've been pulling them out again. But I've been team cozy for a while. I've been trying to just wear comfortable shoes. I have so many valuable shoes and things that are heat that I don't wear them. I usually just wear or my Action Bronson Friends and Family Boosts. I wear those all the time too. It's one of those pairs that I'll cherish. And I remember Action gave me them with a bottle of his olive oil with the shoes. So it's amazing. Yeah, I have a photo when I got them, and I was holding it. I had the shoes and the bottle in one hand. I took a picture.
Oh man! So Robbie, Mike, what do you guys got on feet?
Man, so just like everybody else, I think I'm sitting around in my house not wearing shoes too often, but I typically like Robbie going outside to maybe walk or do a quick run, and I've been wearing my Nike Zoom Fly SPs. Those are like my favorite running shoes right now. So those have been probably the only consistent thing on feet right now. What about you, Robbie?
I wore the N64 Air Max 97s when my girlfriend took me for a walk yesterday. So I like those a lot because they kind of look like they could have been customized with the controller vibes, but they're just comfortable.
Yeah, I was a fan of those. Color blocking's great.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny because knowing that we were going to talk today, the shoe that came to mind was actually the mags that you did, right? That had the like light up tongue, right? Was it the Iron Man ones, right? And I was like, I don't have any shoes that have any cool features like that. So I actually got I realized that I do have a pair of the PG 2.5 PlayStations with the light up tongue. So that's what I wore today. But, it's one of those things that's so interesting to see the progression of, that's something you did 8, 9, 10 years ago. And here we are, the brands are incorporating these types of things that we used to think were, just an anomaly or just like a cool, one-off thing. And how much, not to gas you up, but you've really shaped a lot of the footwear choices and the design stuff on the corporate side of things just by pushing the envelope, on your own, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that because I guess when there's so many options of custom artists, sometimes it's crazy as it sounds. I feel like some people forget about me because I'm pretty consistent. I don't really, that's been one of my strengths and my weaknesses that, people just always expect good work from me. So it's kind of it's the norm. So it takes a lot to really, I guess, make that meter jump to have people really pay attention. So I do appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks for spending, 45 minutes with us today and talking through this. You had some great tips for the up and coming artists. And I think you and I have been in this for a similar length of time. And, for me, sneaker history is really about giving back in ways that, we get away from just the news cycle of things. I think it's important that people get to see the news and what's coming out and what people are doing. But it's also, there's a lot of opportunity for people to just kind of turn around and open the door for the next generation. And you've given, just invaluable information for a lot of people today. So I really appreciate you taking the time and coming on with us.
No, and I appreciate you guys having me. And also, thanks for all the love on that last episode of all the WWE stuff. I listened. It's great. It feels like you could probably talk for hours about the whole wrestling sneaker community, which is crazy.
Super appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on, and hope to talk to you again later.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah. So just to make sure everybody has a way to follow you in case there's somebody that's listening that hasn't, let them know where they can find you online, Dan.
Well, the Twitter and Instagram is Mosh275, and then also the YouTube channel has started up, and that's actually been it's been picking up really well. It's just, the Mosh Customs and a lot of the behind the scenes of, working with some of these really cool people. I'm not the most exciting person in the world, but the people I work with are really exciting. So give that a check out. And then also the Mosh Customs website will be relaunching next month.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on with us, and shout out to everybody listening. Make sure you give Mache a follow on all the platforms. Check out the YouTube channel. And until next time, peace.
See ya.
Hey everyone, this is Nick again. Before you take off, I wanted to ask a couple favors of you. If you're interested in more content from the Sneaker History crew, become a member of our Patreon page where we post daily content, drop exclusive episodes, and host monthly giveaways. We'll even help you hunt for your grails. Check us out at patreon.com/sneakerhistory. Also, make sure you sign up for our email newsletter at sneakerhistory.com/email. We send out weekly updates on the footwear business and what we're working on here at Sneaker History. Last but not least, take a second to tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how much it means to someone, and it might even plant the seeds for something even bigger. As always, we appreciate you, and we'll catch you next time. Peace. Hey everyone, this is Nick again. Before you take off, do us a solid and head over to Apple Podcasts to leave us a review. Give us a rating on Spotify and Amazon Music, and make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel because we have even more video content coming soon. Speaking of new content, we have an amazing community of sneaker enthusiasts that hang out in our Sneaker History Discord on a daily basis. While sneakers is a connection point that brought us all together, we've all discovered countless shared passions that we have in common with each other. We recently launched a couple of new podcasts directly from our community. One of them is a Formula One podcast. If you're an F1 fan like me, the Exhaust Notes podcast is your weekly fix of Formula One fun. It's hosted by myself, Rohit Malhotra, and Todd Yates. New episodes drop every Tuesday. I've been wearing fitted hats for years and collecting my favorite teams since I was a little leaguer. It has been awesome to see so many new fans getting into fitteds in recent years. Crown and Stitch is our new talk show about fitted hats with Dexter, Keith, and myself, where we talk about fitted hats, snapbacks, throw in some obscure hats because we all kind of like some funky stuff once in a while, don't we? Copping, collecting, and so much more. New episodes drop every Wednesday. Hit the links in the show notes for this episode to give our new shows a listen, and be on the lookout for more new podcasts dropping soon. Last but not least, tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how far a simple compliment can take you, and we all know how good it feels to have someone show their appreciation. Thank you all for the support, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.